Oh, you're a vegetarian. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about why it's important for us to be vegetarian and be aware and conscious of what it means to be a vegetarian. My name is Jared.
I'm Alex.
I'm Christina.
I'm Phil.
I'm Abby.
And we're Team 4. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about is statistics and the definition. The definition of vegetarian is somebody who doesn't eat meat at all, but you're still allowed to consume eggs and other products made by animals. And some cool statistics I have for you is like $38 million the government spends subsidized for the food industry, whereas the fruits and vegetable industry only gets 4%. So there's a real lack within the government's funding in terms of vegetarianism, which affects a lot of places, which you'll learn about. And another cool thing is that Americans are the biggest meat consumer in the world. We have so many people just eating meat all the time in America, and it really puts a dampen on our health as a society and many other things, which I'll talk about later. And as you can see, I have a cool little graph right there that says like why most people become vegan or vegetarian. Also going to talk to you about popularity. First thing I want to say is like there's a lot of diverse options with vegetarianism. You can go from eating like food, like protein supplements, like I forget, what was that called? Seitan, and like other stuff like that. So there's a lot of great different options, and there's like a lot of great takeout food too, which is something new and becoming more involved in our culture is veganism. And millennials, people like us, are more likely to become vegan, and actually 48% of people age 18 to 35 are the vegans. And it's funny, most women are also vegan. 78% of women are vegan, so men need to step up and do their part, or at least try it out maybe. And 16 million people are vegan right now, and in 2008 there's only 1 million people, so we're definitely on the rise, which is great. And now we're going to talk about vegetarianism and ethics.
So it's no question that world hunger is a big issue in today's society. The United Nations actually estimates that 795 million people are actually malnourished out of the 7.3 billion people on this planet. So I did the math out really quick, and that is actually 1 out of 9 people that you may come across. Now, 70% of America's grain that they grow is used directly for animals that we consume. So if the United States used just their grain alone and gave directly back to the people, that would be able to feed 800 million people just from the United States. So technically that would eradicate all of the world hunger issues in this world. Now, 1 pound of potatoes is 99.6% less water usage than it takes to create 1 pound of beef for us to eat. Now, if everybody were to give up beef eating, just one of you would save 300,000 gallons of water per year. That could be used for other resources. It's another statistic that 1 out of 10 people don't have access to clean drinking water, which would also be affected if we gave up that beef. Now, if the United States did go ahead and directly feed it to the people, that would create an increase in 80 billion of cap space in the United States economy alone. Now, everybody knows that animals are killed to be eaten. 56 billion animals actually are killed every year for us to eat alone. Now, everybody knows that it's not always the most ethical way that they kill the animals. In fact, in Massachusetts, we just passed a new law for question 3 that will make it more ethical and more friendly environment for the animals to eventually be killed in. Yeah, we gotta be. So animals are sentient beings just like you and I. Now, for example, you have a dog. That dog steps on a nail when you're doing home renovations at your home. You know, you're going to go and you're going to take that animal to the vet to get help for that animal so it doesn't feel bad anymore. Now, if you treated your animal like they treat the cows, chickens, all the animals that we eat, you'd be in some serious trouble. You'd be getting some serious fines on that. And now we're going to move along to
So I'm going to be talking to you guys about the mass production of meat and how it affects the environment. And the first topic in this category is the inefficient use of resources. So to start off, you should know that animal agriculture is the #1 consumer of water and agricultural land in the U.S. today. About 80% of agricultural land goes to animals, growing their food and sustaining their life. And these are only animals that are to be slaughtered for food, not even animals that are going to be just used for eggs or milk or things like that. Now, to put this into perspective, we have to consider that this results in about 7 football fields worth of agricultural land being bulldozed every minute just to sustain meat eaters and human consumption, and especially America's addiction to meat. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is water contamination. So animal agriculture not only consumes the most water, but it also contributes the most to water pollution, especially pollution in waterways. This is proven by the fact that in 2006, there was actually a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico that was about half the size of Maryland. And that was about 10 years ago. So last year, that dead zone actually grew to be about the size of Rhode Island and Connecticut combined. And in 2016, it's actually grown to be bigger than that. Now, a dead zone, for those of you that don't know, is an area in the ocean where most of the marine life is dead, just because there isn't enough oxygen to sustain them. And this dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is actually the second largest man-made dead zone in the entire world, and it's created almost entirely by Midwestern farming in the United States. The last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about in regards to the mass production of meat and its effect on the environment is air pollution. So when we're talking about air pollution, it's really important to remember that about 51% of greenhouse gases are a result of animal agriculture. And these statistics only get worse when you consider methane production and nitrous oxide production, as there's about 65% of nitrous oxide comes from animals and the most methane comes from animal agriculture. So that's really detrimental to our society as a whole, just because clean air is obviously vital for all of our lives. And the fact that we could actually do something to stop this, and if we all just limit our meat intake, we could really reverse a lot of this. And we're not taking that action. It just speaks a lot about how our culture is set up and how our meat addiction in the U.S. is really so deeply embedded. So the conclusion of all these facts is that becoming a vegetarian or limiting your meat intake is the #1 way to fight environmental ruin. And as that's a hot topic in today's society, that's something that we should all take into consideration.
I'm going to be talking about the health benefits real quick. The most important of those being disease prevention. You're going to get less cholesterol. You're not going to be eating bacon and a ton of fatty foods like steak and stuff like that. And you also have a very, very low chance of cardiovascular disease and other diseases like that if you turn your diet to vegetarian. And you can also prevent a lot of cancers such as colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. And one of the most important parts of the nutrition is nutrition in terms of health benefits. A lot of people are worried you're not going to get enough protein or whatever, but I assure you there's plenty of options and a very diverse range of options for those. And you get a lot of vitamin C and E, and nuts and seeds that you eat have a ton of magnesium in it. And just like basically every single vitamin you need, you can easily get from a vegetarian diet, and there's a lot less reduced fat, which is going to help the longevity of your body. And some other benefits that are involved are you're not going to get salmonella, which is good because you won't be eating any chicken. You're not going to get E. coli, and the global food supply will hopefully be affected if a lot of people go vegetarian, and we'll be able to feed, for example, like starving people in Africa or other places like that. And that's all I have for the health benefits. Next, we're going to talk about how we're hurting ourselves.
And what it will stop. Fact of the matter is, we're doing more damage to our planet than we are benefiting ourselves by eating meat. It's expected that by 2050, we won't have enough livestock to sustain the world's thoughtless habits. It's expected that over the next 20 years, the population will increase by at least 2 to 3 billion. Right now, at the rate that we're going, most Americans eating more of a Western diet will not have enough food or meat, for that matter, to feed all of these 10 billion people or so. Right now, we produce enough livestock and crops to feed about 10 to 11 billion, but we choose to feed it to our animals for meat production. As Abby mentioned earlier, the population is a big factor in factory farming. Right now, more than half of the world's population from the production of meat. Right now, more than half of the world's pollution is from the production of meat. At this moment, our carbon emissions are higher than they've ever been, and they will continue to increase with the amount of meat that's being produced. The greenhouse effect is the increase in the average temperature of the Earth. As we produce more carbon by producing meat, we're making the Earth hotter and making water more acidic. Think about 30 years from now down the road when we won't be able to grow crops because it will be too hot in certain areas, and it will be the water will be too acidic to drink the water. Thinking in the future. So, how can we fix this? I think we first all need to realize that we have a huge issue on our hands. There are more starving people in parts of the country than there are. That's not what I meant to say.
Keep rolling.
There are people starving in parts of the country, and we're having beef, chicken, pork, and other meats as a main course every single meal. Let's take the steak you had, for example, last night for dinner. When you took your first bite, were you thinking about how the animal grew, what it ate, how it was raised, how it was treated, or even how it was killed? I bet most of you don't think about where your food comes from, or how it's raised, or how it dies, for that matter. We need to start thinking about it. If we want to improve our environment, we need to produce less meat, because that's the bulk of our pollution produced on Earth today. Emission from cars doesn't even come close to outweigh the emissions that we produce every day from eating animals and meats that we do. Eating a meat-based diet is bad for us in many different ways. Number one, we don't have enough information on genetic growth hormones, chemicals, and how they affect our bodies long term. Eating vegetarian is better for your overall health, and to top it off, it's more cost efficient. We need to realize that as a society, that this is eventually going to catch up to us. The media hides so much from us, something as elementary as eating every day. If enough people realize what eating and producing meat actually is doing to the world, maybe something will actually happen.
So obviously we've seen the negative effects that eating meat has on the environment and on our health.
This is supposed to be, but you can go.
So if everyone changed to a vegetarian diet, emissions would fall by 44%, and also we would save $973 billion in health costs, and that number goes to over $1 trillion if everybody switched to a vegan diet. But obviously we've all been raised on meat-heavy diets, so a more rational option is if everyone went vegetarian for just one day, not 1 day a week, just 1 day, the US alone would save 100 billion gallons of water, 1.5 billion pounds of crops, 70 million gallons of gas, and 3 million acres of land. So that's something important to think about. But it's actually pretty easy to cut meat out of your diet, if only for 1 day. But there are so many meat-free options both at the grocery store and at supermarkets. And basically it's just the concept of supply and demand. Like if people aren't going out and buying meat to cook or at restaurants and stuff, the grocery stores are going to stop stocking so much, and then in turn the factory farms are going to stop producing so much meat. And also if we keep supporting like ethical companies with our money, then they will, those options will continue to get bigger and become more prevalent. So how you can help personally, decreasing your meat consumption, even if it's just 1 day a week, can do a lot. And think of if every family in America did that, like we'd be eating so much less meat. You might think like you don't have that much say in it, or if you stop eating meat, what's that really going to do? But if you think about that, as I said, if you stop buying less meat personally, your stores are going to stock less, and if people around the world do that, we're going to make a big change. Okay, so something you can do is educate yourself. There are a couple of documentaries that talk more about this. So there's Forks Over Knives, Cowspiracy, Earthlings, and Before the Flood. And yeah, just think about what you're spending your money on, if those are ethical things that you actually support, or if you're paying for something that you don't personally support. So please think about this next time you go to McDonald's and consider getting an apple pie because it's vegan. Okay.
Thank you for listening. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. How long was that?
15 minutes, 14 seconds.
Okay, that was good.
Okay, that was-
That was like